Welcome to the WRAL Daily Download. I'm your host, Amanda Lamb. In today's deep dive conversation with WRAL Investigates senior producer Randall Kerr, we're talking about some really disturbing information his team has uncovered. The deaths of 2 children who were supposed to be protected by Nash County. Their families were under investigation by the local Department of Social Services at the time of their deaths. Randall, welcome to the program.
Thanks, Amanda.
So I know you worked on this with anchor and reporter Lena Tillett and reporter Keenan Willard. How did this first come to your team's attention that 2 children who were recommended to be removed from their homes had died?
Well, the Crystal Lane case, which happened earlier this year, really that's what we were working on. There were still plenty of unanswered questions. We'd been trying for months to get more information about that case, more information from social workers if we could get anyone to talk. Because we still had a lot of concerns, even though the state investigated after her death and they put in a corrective action plan, which is ongoing. We thought there were still a lot of questions, including the fact that a social worker who was lower on the totem pole, who can't make decisions about removal or not removal, that she's been the only one that's been disciplined in the case involving Crystal Lane.
So tell me about Crystal Lane's case. She was 8 years old. What happened?
Okay, so she was at school, and the school noticed some injuries on her. So they contacted the Nash County Sheriff's Office, who investigated, because schools are required to report suspected abuse. It was investigated. The Nash Sheriff, while they did not think the abuse rose to a level of criminal charges, they did go to Nash Social Services and recommend that Crystal be removed from the home. She was under the care of her grandmother as well as some of her siblings, and they recommended removal. That did not happen, and she is now dead. Yeah, grandmother charged with beating her to death. I
was going to say, what were those circumstances? And I know this really hit that Nash County deputy, Macy Hasty, very hard because she had investigated this. What did she say?
She was and obviously the case still haunts her, and she almost felt like, what is my point? What am I doing if we investigate something, that's our recommendation, and nothing happens, and now that little girl's dead? She was almost just at a loss.
I can imagine. So I know as part of your investigation into Crystal Lane's death, you interviewed a DSS worker from Nash County. You agreed to hide her identity to protect her. What did she tell you about this situation? And then I guess she led you to more information.
Yeah, so we were talking to her about the Crystal Lane case. Now, we spoke to 2 social workers who were involved in the case. One's former, and that's who wanted to protect her identity because she has another job now. We also spoke to another one who gave us information on background, who was involved in that case, and their stories are the same about responsibility here. And we were during that interview. Lena asked her, so have you ever been a part of something like this happening before? And she said yes.
And that opened up a whole new door.
And we asked her what happened. The child was recommended for removal. What happened after that? The child wasn't, and that child's now dead.
Well, we're going to talk more about the details of that case after the break. Welcome back to the WRAL Daily Download. So right before the break, Randall, we were talking about the fact that you're doing this interview about one case where a child who was recommended for removal from a home in Nash County had died. And just by chance, during that interview, this former DSS worker for Nash County revealed that she was aware of another death similar to this involving Chase Hilliard.
Correct.
So tell me what happened in that case and how was it similar to Crystal's case?
Yeah, well, just so people understand, social services cases are very, very hard to investigate. You really need people to tell you stuff. We can't, as part of our job, we can't request a case file.
It's all confidential.
It's all confidential. So, interestingly enough, when Chase Hilliard died back in 2020, we had reported on his death, and we reported on his mother's subsequent arrest. but any mention of social services was never part of our reporting or anyone else's.
So we didn't know at that time that they had been under investigation by social services, that this child had been recommended for removal, and that did not occur.
Correct. So we started looking back at some cases. Then we finally had someone give us a name, which confirmed what our suspicion was. But like I said, we still couldn't request records. So we started looking into Chase Hilliard's death, and we come to find out through the medical examiner determined his death was non-accidental traumatic head injuries. The mother claims that he had fallen out of bed, and that's why it took so long for the mother to be charged, because the autopsy took several months.
How old was Chase?
He died just short of his second birthday, and so we had that report. Then we went to the courthouse. We had spoken to the mother's attorney to see if he would provide any information. He did not. So we went to the courthouse and found an open file with the mother's case where Vonketta Hilliard's sister had actually filed an affidavit in support of her sister, and that spelled out DSS's long involvement with the mother and Chase that started before Chase was even born, because of concerns about Vonketta's ability to even care for herself, much less her unborn baby. She was missing prenatal appointments, so DSS started, according to this affidavit, they were taking her to appointments, and Vonketta was under the care of her own mother, because there were certain questions about her mental capacity. And in that affidavit, the sister said things like she reads at the third grade level, she can't count money. I mean, so there were a lot of red flags. And that's what ties these cases together, that in both of these cases, DSS for Nash County was intimately involved in these cases. They knew what was going on in these homes. They had documentation. They had been investigating. And it sounds like some people, including criminal investigators in the other case, in Crystal's case, and in this case, social workers said these kids need to be removed, but it didn't happen. Why didn't it happen? Who blocked it? The social worker we spoke to said social workers, even their supervisors, cannot make the call to remove a child from the home. It has to come from upper management, and that leads us to the program administrator of social services, child protective services, the deputy director of Nash County DSS, and the director. Those are the three. And it goes from that level up.
The people who have the authority to make these decisions.
So program administrator, and every county office works differently. So we've asked, but it's still unclear who would have the final say. But we know the first rung up, according to the social workers we spoke to, the first rung up was the program administrator named Kimberly Nicholson, that she was the one that stopped the recommendations at that level. Whether they had to go higher or not, if she gave approval, then it went to the next chain in command up. We don't know, because they won't answer our questions. We've asked Kimberly Nicholson directly for responses to these social workers' concerns. We've asked her boss for answers about questions about her concerns and whether the chain of command that kept these children in these homes, whether it stopped with her.
Have you gotten any response from them about these cases specifically, or just even in general, the process? Why these kids obviously were failed by this process?
If the only thing we know about the process is, like I mentioned earlier, after Crystal Lane's death, the state did go in and put a corrective action plan. So there's supposed to be more strict guidelines and more guidelines that are comprehensible to people to follow. If A happens, then go to B. If B happens, then go to C. So that is in the works. So we're waiting to see what changes it'll make. From the county level, I've been told that we will get a response from the county, whether it's going to be directly from the county manager, who obviously oversees all the departments, or whether it will be a statement on behalf of DSS. We don't know yet. We've given them a week to let them know that the story was airing tonight. I was told Friday that we would get something today. Right now we haven't, so we will have to wait and see. The state did send us a statement, because the Department of Health and Human Services oversees all the counties. They have jurisdiction over them, and they basically said those types of decisions and personnel decisions are up to the county. We really can't do anything.
Yeah, and just to be clear, we're recording this on Monday. The story will air Monday night, and we will be putting this episode out Tuesday morning. But bottom line, there's this belief that we want to keep the families together, and sometimes that can be myopic in terms of not looking at the other circumstances. Is there a concern that this could be a problem in other places other than Nash, or are you really just focused on Nash at this point?
Well, we're really focusing on Nash because that's where we have these cases, and as part of our work, we've also requested every time a child dies in state custody or county custody, the state is required by law to investigate it. So we have requested it's called a fatality review. We've requested every fatality review case file for the past 10 years. And we're just in the process of getting those back. So we haven't had a chance to look to see if there are systematic issues or appear to be systematic issues in other counties or not. There is a fatality review in Chase Hilliard's case. Right now it is under seal because the criminal case is still going on. That told the district attorney in Nash County says if we file a motion to get that, he will not challenge that. So we're waiting for that process to take part as well.
And, I spoke with Lena Tillett, who worked on this with you a little while ago, and she said this was really, in her mind, probably the most disturbing investigation she's ever worked on. Just knowing that these kids died and that there was a possibility to intervene and potentially prevent that. I mean, is that kind of what you take away from this as well? I know you've been doing this a long time, but as a parent, it's pretty heartbreaking. I
mean, Lena's a new parent. I'm a parent. Anytime you have children who are dying, before they have a chance to live, it is terrible. And then when in cases like this, where you see that from an outsider's point of view, and like you said, I've been doing this a long time, both of these deaths certainly looked preventable.
Okay. Well, Randall, thank you so much for your insight and your hard work and your reporting on this really disturbing situation. If you'd like to hear more episodes, please follow WRAL Daily Download in Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or on just about any podcast app. Once you follow the show, you'll automatically get new episodes every weekday. Thanks for listening.